Thank you everyone for joining us. This complimentary presentation is brought to you by eDynamic. In today's presentation, we'll cover why it is important to conjure the right mix of people, process, and technology to drive revenue growth through marketing. Our presenter today for this webinar is Abhiraj Banerjee, Director of Business Development for Demand Generation at eDynamic. Abhiraj has more than 15 years of experience throughout the industry. He has been leading the demand generation across both B2B and B2C, driving demand generation solutions for eDynamic. He has generated millions of revenue, and he has been a pioneer user for digital technologies and a leader. Now, over to Abhiraj from eDynamic. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll have a question answer session.
Thank you, Anirban. And big hello to everybody who's joined in for this session today. This is Abhiraj, and I will be presenting a fairly relevant topic in today's times around demand generation and marketing. And obviously, we'll try and cover a lot of the aspects that revolve around the life of a modern marketer. How things stand today, what are the things that they are doing well, they're doing smart, where are they getting the results, how have they kind of improved in the past few years and reached the stage at which they are in currently. We'll look at ideal scenarios of demand generation, what really and truly should happen for really exponential results around demand gen. We'll talk about that, but then we'll gradually walk you through scenarios where what we see as ideal around demand gen may not be the actual truth, and there are good reasons behind that, and of course we will cover some of those. And we've tried to create an image where things that get really missed out on demand gen on an everyday basis, things that strategically or tactically have great impact on how your demand gen really comes through when you look at results at the end of the year. These are small and big things that really and truly do matter, and we'll talk about those and why they lend this halo of a mirage around demand gen. What truly is not what it appears to be when you look at the results. Then going forward, we'll talk about how you can avoid a scenario where demand gen is really not getting you the results that you're aspiring for or you planned for. So we'll talk about what we term as an enterprise common denominator, and this is truly and strictly in terms of marketing or demand gen. We'll speak about some things which, if planned for, if thought through, and if implemented, can really get you the kind of results you're expecting. And we'll finally wind up with a few good examples. Like always in marketing, there are some brilliant examples of work done all around the world. The work that truly is trend setting, which really shows how you can combine all the different aspects that come under demand gen to achieve breakthrough results. So we'll walk through a few examples of that at the end and discuss what really went right and why these campaigns and why these demand gen strategies and tactics were really successful for the companies that we'll talk about. Great. So without any ado, I'll get started. And I'll talk about demand gen and the ideal scenario of demand gen, and we'll talk about the modern marketer. Talking about myself, far from being a modern marketer, I started in a time when digital marketing was, very similar to, trying to shove spaghetti up a wildcat during the night. So, we had no visibility, so we were the educated blind, and we tried to do a lot of things without really knowing what is working, what customers would like to see, what they like receiving, and how they would want us to approach them. There was no visibility, and therefore it was really spray and pray in the literal sense of the word. But times have changed, and I'm talking about a time which is 15 years ago, and today the modern marketer is blessed with several strengths. Some have been acquired with time, and some they have become masters at over the past few years as things have started to change. So the modern marketer is all about a few things, and these things are best encapsulated in what you see here. The approach is truly multi-channel, and it needs to be. We are seeing an explosion in the way people are really absorbing and consuming the messaging, the communication, and the content that marketers are throwing at them. So multi-channel is really, it's not even an approach, it's basically a way of life for the marketer. The differentiator for the modern marketer is in getting personal with their approach. How detailed and how deep this personalization can be is basically the true test of how a modern marketer is understanding or not understanding his or her audience. And then once you look at personalization, the other big aspect of marketing is around content. B2B marketing has always been heavily reliant on content. Not to say that B2C isn't, but with B2B, the role that content plays, singularly over and above the experience, the branding, or other aspects like innovation and delivery of messaging, probably plays much larger part, much significant part. So marketers have realized that, of course, and over the past few years we've seen how content marketing has truly emerged as an area of strength with most B2B marketing organizations. That's the other pillar of the modern marketer. And then, with so many people accessing so much of content on so many different kinds of channels and devices, what really is becoming increasingly evident is the fact that the marketer who has data superiority stands a better chance at reaching the right people at the right time, at the right place. And essentially that's what it all boils down to. So data superiority, and we'll spend a bit of time talking about this later on in today's session, is really one of the defining pillars of what a modern marketer is all about. Okay, great. So we'll start with talking a bit about multi-channel and the fact that marketers have to necessarily and essentially look at cross-channel engagement. And this stems from the fact that a marketer has many bows in his arrow. And again, the reference to the marketer here is of a male, and I'm not being sexist. It's just that lack of time prevented us from putting together a female image and transforming it to what the modern marketer looks like. So cross-channel engagement again is all about your bows and what you have really lined up to attack your audience with. So you start with the web. You have your own web experience. You have websites. You have microsites. You have landing pages, etc. And then there's the entire mobile experience where you're reaching out to your audience on the kind of devices that they access your content from. So it could be phones, smartphones, and even tablets. So that's the other important channel. Email has and always be will always be a strong channel for marketers, because it's still kind of a lifeblood to any kind of marketing initiative on digital. And then the emergence of social has meant that it's become a must-have channel to be engaged on with your prospects and customers, because they really and truly are big consumers of different kinds of social properties on the internet, public as well as closed group kind of properties. So the cross-channel engagement is right across and right through all of these. And from a customer's perspective, the life cycle of a customer's everyday life, is all about different parts of the life, at different times. What are you consuming, and from where are you consuming that content at different stages? So, this is a representation of how people can potentially access content. So, different devices at different times of the day, and again, different mindsets, of course. But what you're trying to do is that you're trying to tailor and fashion your content from a marketer's perspective to reach them, hopefully at the right time. But you're trying to increase your probability of reaching them, pretty much through the day and on any kind of device that they're accessing your content from. Some interesting figures here, and a lot of thought leaders, analysts, industry watchers have been looking at different aspects around the phenomenon of a modern marketer. And some leaders in the industry reckon that while cross-channel marketing is important, the importance cannot be really overstated here. Majority of marketers say that it is very important to their business. So obviously, they're cognizant that it is essential. A large section of marketers have implemented, personalization, for instance. That's the other pillar of a modern marketer. Have generated, positive ROI within, a few months of implementation. So obviously things are happening. And then, there's another large group that really truly believes that website personalization can improve a lot of conversions happening right from within your site. About 72% of marketers do see the importance of personalization, but still really don't know how to incorporate it. And we'll go a bit in depth into this aspect as we go ahead in this presentation. Marketers are getting smarter, like I said. They are looking at personalization as as importantly as it should be looked at, and a lot of things there are going for them in terms of achieving this kind of personal approaches. So whether it's profiles and preferences of users, people who've already given a lot of information to them, you already know about them, and you can therefore tailor your responses to them. History with you, yes, whatever they've done on your site, in your community, on your social profiles, etc., can be tracked and can be acted upon. How they found you and what they did when they did actually find you, those are again important considerations that inform personalization. And importantly, I think critically, customer life stage is equally important when you're looking at personalization. And in a B2B context, this is almost a must-have or imperative that whatever you do to a customer, in terms of content, should be personalized, yes, but also should be relevant and contextual in terms of where they could be potentially in terms of their buying cycle. Multi-device is the other big component, and we talked about getting the message out at the right time, on the right device, and getting the right message out, which is a lot to do with personalization and context. So there's some very good examples of that, and obviously, it's important that these things are taken in terms of what the impact could be. So personalization based on location, for instance, is a big hit with marketers, with the modern marketer. And then, driving, a user or potential customer or prospect to very industry-specific or very need-specific spots on your website or on your landing pages or on your microsites is equally important in terms of how personal you can get with your content. Device-based personalization can provide better experiences. We're talking about experiences that can be rendered on 900 pixels or 720 pixels or 300 pixels, depending on what kind of device is being used. And it's always better to have an experience that is suited to each and every device. These are things that marketers are already doing, and they're moving down the right path. As I said, returning customers are being treated like returning customers. And any kind of indication from a marketer to a customer saying that, look, we know you, and we want to speak to things that you have shown an interest in, is always a big head start. Geography-based personalization or targeting, we spoke about that, and it's always important that that's one of the first few steps that marketers have taken and already taking in the path towards better results. Vertical-based and industry-based targeting is fairly simple to attack. Again, there are tools available which marketers can use to find out how their customers or prospects, how they're reaching them, and what are they doing. When you don't know much about them in the history aspect. So you can use real-time ID identification, from tools to really find out their whereabouts and start personalizing in real time. Also, marketers have gotten more sophisticated. Again, content, and you might have great content, you might have personalized content, and you might have content that is based on context or past history, etc. But delivering that content is, where the marketers have truly, achieved a lot over the past few years. They have the right tools now, so they can personalize content based on behavior, visitor behavior, on, through rules, through persona-based personalization, and then also through cross-channel personalization. So any kind of analytics you glean from email, social, any other channels that you've been trying to reach prospects through, and once you have those analytics, you can truly create, profile cards and target your content to them in the right way. And then, of course, there's a very important word which is, doing the rounds, is content with context. And context comes from understanding the background of the customer, the stage at which they could be. And this is, again, especially important for B2B. A lot of marketers are following this. In the past, they've had challenges with trying to, produce good content, yes, but really not being able to have that content adopted, adequately or, by the right people. So that's a big impact that, again, the importance of adoption of content has really dawned on smart marketer today, and they're doing a lot more in terms of getting the content out at the right stage of a prospect's life cycle. And the other important aspect is doing the last mile, and with prospects, it's important to get the right mix at the right time. So dovetailing your content to audience and stage really usually results in a very elaborate kind of content map, which is, you can see a representative example here of a content map, and how different kinds of thought leadership or content pieces really plug in through different stages of a prospect's life cycle. Again, you can see the audience, you can see the stage at which they are in, the vertical that they could be in, and their potential need or pain point, and then you have content. So this kind of mapping is not possible, at a very cursory or high level. It needs to be detailed, and you need to have the right kind of insight into your prospect to be producing this kind of content mapping. But marketers are doing it, and they're doing it well. They're using data from one system to power, their other systems, and this is one of the big changes that we have seen in the past 2 to 3 years, where you always had, good tools and technologies to support marketing goals, but what we're seeing today is a convergence of, some of these tools and technologies, and the essential convergence is basically of the data, and marketing is all about getting the right data, because that's critical. it's kind of crucial to anything that you do. So, having convergence in data from one system to the other basically empowers you to make the most of every system that you have at your disposal. And marketers are doing it. They recognize that their CRM needs to record what's happening socially with their prospects. And again, there are rules there are some boundaries there, but needs to be done. It needs to be done for superior marketing, and they're doing it. If you're posting content through a content marketing platform, if you're using video on your site and on third-party internet channels, how people are reacting to that video needs to be recorded in the form of data and then passed on to more content delivery mechanisms, like probably your CMS or even your social marketing tool or your email tool, etc. So it's a world which is essential for a marketer to really be successful, because it's all about the data that they have, by converging these systems together. Okay, so those are some good things that we saw. And modern marketers are doing it. They're doing it well. They're doing it successfully. They're getting results. But let's cast a look at how much or how many of such initiatives are really getting them the results that they are expecting to. And which brings us to the section of our presentation which deals about the mirage around demand generation. We saw the ideal state, we saw the good things that are happening. But let's look under the hood, under the cover, and see what is truly happening, and why why are we even talking about it today? So what we felt was that, and this is again based on a lot of experiences with a lot of our customers, prospects that we are working with. And what we've seen is that they often say that, look, we're doing the right things, but it seems that, when I look at everything at the end of the year, I'm not really there. I'm very short, and, for some reason I can't make out why I'm short, because I'm pretty much following the book. I'm doing all the right things. There's the right approach. There is the right messaging that I have. I have tons of content. I have a great team which is scouring the right media for me, doing everything. But why aren't I seeing results? So it's a pertinent question, and we analyzed it, and we keep analyzing it in depth. When we work with our customers, and what we feel is that there are 4 big honey traps out here, and these traps are better explained in the slides to follow. But one of the big traps is process, and we talked about how marketing is much more streamlined. It's creative still, and it'll always be, but there is a process to doing everything. There's better planning, there's better execution. But why do we say a process when it starts to strangle a few things in your overall scheme of things? Then it can tend to be a pitfall, and we've shown you some examples later on in this presentation, and we'll go through those. But in our mind, that's a big honey trap for a modern marketer, one that can prevent them having the kind of revenue impact that they set out to. The second is about content. There is so much of content being produced, so much of it is being consumed, but no marketer is really and truly 100% confident that all the content produced is truly A-class. Probably that's asking for too much. But then, if when we analyzed a lot of this content that was being produced by a number of our customers, we didn't feel that it was not quality content. It was, but it was probably not the right content for the right audience. So, in other words, there was a bit of a mix-up here, a bit of a muddle. Content was being produced, but it wasn't, in some instances, intended to reach the kind of people that it did. So it was a question of wrong delivery. In certain other instances, it was all about basically just the right content not being produced. And it had a lot to do with probably a failure to grasp essentials of solution marketing or product marketing, or understanding the positioning, whatever the case may be. I mean, there are different kinds of use cases there, but the right content was not being produced, and that was a big problem area. And the third was, when you have so many contributors as they are, in modern marketing there are so many contributors, even CEOs of organizations are blogging, they're participating actively in demand gen. When with so many users, there are bound to be some loopholes because there is a process that needs to be set around them, and and that process needs to be complied with. If it's not complied with, things can go wrong very quickly. So we'll show you some examples of this as well. The third was that with so much of technology available, and very good and very smart technology, no doubt about that, available to a marketer, we almost got a feeling in a number of instances with customers is they were letting technology really and truly dictate their marketing goals instead of them using the technology to really do what they bought the technology for or invested in it for. And that was a big concern. It was a huge frequency, high frequency of customer marketers who were suffering because they just said that, look, we have to do things this way because this is how this technology works. And and that led to a lot of reverse engineering happening, creativity being slaughtered, audience life stages or audience preferences not really being taken into account, and so on and so forth. So it was a classic case of the hunter becoming the hunted. So technology was not really being the enabler that it should be, but rather something that was driving the entire process, which was basically fundamentally wrong. And then finally, one big aspect, and we talked about how the modern marketer is empowered with data superiority, and what of the data is wrong and what of the data is not correct, and that can basically mess up a lot of things, and that's what we found. We found that if your foundation is not correct, and one of your foundations is data is not correct, then you're basically barking up the wrong tree, and mistakes are being made, the big level mistakes, which have kind of a percolating effect, kind of a domino impact on everything that you do. So those are some big pieces that we found that were really and truly interrupting the modern marketer. Let's see how. Interesting statistic. We looked at a few figures about cross-channel marketing and analytics and engagement a while back. Now, only 5% of the marketers interviewed by Forrester just a year or so back said that they were very prepared to execute on a cross-channel strategy. It's a very revealing number because everybody is going multi-channel, but how prepared are you to actually execute it right down to the T over 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years? More revealing was the fact that a recent survey, 10% of marketers, 10% of brands are basically executing their cross-channel communication, and this communication is being informed by one view of the customer. This is a Venn diagram that you see out here in a lot of ways. People are executing cross-channel, but they are not really executing it with context because they don't have that one view of the customer, which is to say that you're doing some things right, but you're not doing the other things right. So what you're doing is not really getting you the fruits that you should be getting. The idea is right, the intent is right. You want to do multi-channel, you want to do cross-channel communication, cross-channel engagement, but you're not looking at the customer. You're not looking at their context, their behavior, their insight. You don't have one view of that, which is basically you're trying to do different things on different channels for the same customer, which is basically marketing hierarchy in our minds, because the customer is getting confused. He's getting something on social from you. He's getting something else on email from you. There is no synergy. There is no sync. And that's the worst thing that a marketer can probably commit. And then, a lot of, marketing spend is really misaligned with what the customer really needs. Again, hark back to the wrong content being produced and the lack of compliance there. I talked about that a while back. And this is a big indicator of this, of the statistic that you see right now, is that customers need something. And they're at a particular stage and they need something from potential suitors or potential vendors. But they're getting something else. And they're getting something else because something else is being produced by marketers who unfortunately are spending their dollars probably on not of the right content. So so these are some telling figures on why things are not really happening the way they should be. Also, to add to that, the fact is that while a large percentage of marketers are measuring their channels, but only a very small percentage relatively are really measuring what influence one channel has on the other. And that's a big letdown, in terms of conversions, because if you've got somebody interested through social, but you're losing that prospect on your website, then it is that prospect is likely never to come back to you again. And that's the kind of thing that truly impacts conversions in a negative way. It impacts revenue in a big way, and ultimately at the end of the year, the marketer is clutching at straws when he looks at the revenue impact. And then we kind of delved deeper into that, and what we found was that it's great to produce great content, yes, of course. It's great to look at what a customer is requiring at different stages of their buy cycle. But it does not mean or does not imply that content will always equate to conversion. And we have many examples of that. We have existing customers. There's a ton of research out there from a ton of sources that can tell you the same thing. And the reason behind this is that marketers start off with something. There is, in the background, there's bad data, on their systems. There is not the right kind of customer picture. They're probably not looked at the customer from all channels, in terms of analytics. All of these things combined to really undermine their content creation effort. And therefore, when content is being produced, and it's being produced by the dozens, and really good quality content, a lot of time, creativity is being spent. But when this content is actually being consumed or being directed to potential customers, they're not really responding to it in the way that marketers are expecting them to. And it's all down to the bad background there, bad data, lack of cross-channel analytics being analyzed, etc. And at that stage, marketers tend to get frustrated. They tend to get impatient. They feel that, look, we're doing the right things, or mostly the right things, but we're not really seeing the effect. So why is my content marketing not working the way it is working for probably a few others? So they tend to look at peers. They tend to look at, tend to go back to the drawing board, tend to revisit their plans, and tend to see what was working better for them a couple of years back, and then they start flooding the waterfall by they're trying to do much more through content marketing, through outbound. They just start throwing out content, which is taking a step back, because you're going back to spray and pray instead of doing it in a thoughtful way like it should be done today. So all those kinds of negative things can happen if content really does not get you the kind of conversions you're expecting. Again, doing it right, but well, progress is not really what it should be. So again, this is a typical B2B breakdown of leads that accrue from demand gen. And a long-term opportunity worth nurturing, that's really 70% of average B2B leads are in that category, and those are the worst. Those are the worst in terms of revenue impact, because you don't have numbers to show. At the end of the day, when your budgets are being finalized for the next year, your boss will not look at long-term opportunities. You'll look at marketing impact on revenue, and the 70% really doesn't do any justice to that consideration. And one of the things that drives this is, moving people or buyers, potential buyers, from a stage of consideration where they are being nurtured to one of commitment or, action on the next step is probably the most important part. It's probably the most difficult part also of the B2B sales process. But that is where marketing truly needs to have an impact for the modern marketer to impact revenue. Not happening as the way it should be again. We talked about, process and how, it can really defeat your purpose. And, an example of that is, and this is a very specific example which might be relevant to a lot of you who use a number of marketing technologies and systems in your effort. To give you an example, and we've chosen a few systems here that might be familiar. So Salesforce.com, and it's an industry-leading CRM, and a lot of customers use it, not less, a lot of B2B customers. And, you have you have all the marketers who are using it as well. So classic case here is of, how your Salesforce or CRM data is really being leveraged by your other systems, right? And, this is a pitfall of the worst kind if you see. So we've given you an example of how the name of a potential opportunity with a prospect, the expected revenue, these two fields, just these two fields, can have a big impact on what you're doing with this prospect through other systems. And these other systems, for example, if your CRM is integrated with your CMS system, or your CRM is obviously feeding in information or intelligence or data to your social media marketing system or to your email automation system. Now, these systems are taking what they are getting from your CRM, and your CRM is not lying. It's, the numbers out there are accurate, but are they accurate, really? So the use case here is that if you have an overeager sales rep and, a $10,000 potential opportunity is being earmarked as a $150,000 opportunity, and probably just an entry-level engagement is being marked as a big project, then these are misleading fields. And not just your CRM fields, these misleading fields can have a big impact in what you're going to do with this prospect if they come and visit your website, if they come and visit your Twitter account, or if they come and see, or if they get an email from you, which might be relative to what their interests are. So misleading fields can have a big impact, for example, if your systems are integrated, if the data is not right. And this is a typical problem of bad data. Again, when you qualify a lead or a potential prospect or an account, revenue of the account, geography of the account, or the kind of employees that the account has, or whether it's a target account or not, these things are very important. And if these things are not adhered to by your sales folks or your sales organization, then they can have a big impact on what you will do in marketing with this data. It's a typical example of how the process, which is well laid out, you have the right technology, you have the right people doing the right tools, but yet, what you get is bad data, which is flowing through in different systems and impacting your revenue in a very negative way. More examples: marketing and sales always working together, so we're led to believe. And again, if you track the journey of a lead or an unknown prospect right through the pipeline, and this is a pipeline, it's typical sales decisions B2B pipeline that we have taken as an illustrative example. So we track the journey of an unknown prospect. The lead comes into your system. It's a raw lead. Then it becomes marketing qualified. Once it's been nurtured to some extent and it's been qualified. So when we look at qualification, some sample parameters are listed here. And, again, these may vary. These may go to great depths and detail, depending on, what a marketer really is looking for in terms of qualification. But these are some, sample fields that we've just used to, qualify a particular lead and show it to you. So if a company comes in, showing interest in your offering, marketing does the qualification check and then qualifies them, and then it goes into become a marketing qualified lead. But for this marketing qualified lead to become a sales accepted lead is a big stage as far as the alignment between marketing and sales is concerned. So it is at this stage that lead qualification truly needs to happen, because marketing has a different set of parameters and sales may not have those parameters. So for instance, if all these parameters that you see on your screen are being checked by a particular prospect, then it's great. I mean, obviously it automatically becomes a sales accepted lead, right? But if some parameters are being met, some others are not being met, what happens then? Does it stay a marketing qualified lead, or does the sales team step in and say that, look, we have good gut feel about this, so we'll take it on, and therefore it becomes a sales accepted lead, or they reject it altogether and it goes back into nurturing by marketing? All of those are questions that need to be answered, and answered very, very honestly and transparently by these two teams, because what we felt was that in terms of lead qualification, looking at and or, those two terms are very, very important. What is imperative for the sales team may not be an imperative field for the marketing team, and that's always the case. So therefore, looking at both and or scenarios in terms of qualification might be the way to go. So if the company revenue and location is checked and it is in sync with what the sales target is, for that account, and if that prospect has downloaded and downloaded a lot of collateral from the site, spent time visiting 5 to 6 pages on the site, then those two parameters combined are enough to make it a sales accepted lead. And if those two are not met, then it stays with marketing, to be qualified. So things like that are very important in this qualification process between marketing and sales. Don't happen. You might end up with a big pipeline, which is basically, which is a waste of time for sales, or marketing might be choked with so many leads to nurture because sales is rejecting everything. So both of those two scenarios are disastrous. So the other, offshoot of this is that if this qualification is not happening, if this handshake between marketing and sales is not happening appropriately, then again, it's a case of data, entering your systems. And you have multiple systems. You could have your CRM, CMS, your email tool, you have the analytics tool, you have social media. All of these tools these technologies are there, sitting there, and data is flowing in. But if the right data does not go into the systems right at this initial stage, then all you'll get at the end of the day is bad data, which is going to impact everything, including revenue. And finally, very interesting example of how how human error can also really impact revenue. Again, marketing is a lot about creativity. It's about people doing great things, great ideas, coming up with differentiating positioning, etc. Great branding, but they can also get it wrong at times, and it happens a lot. It happens all the time. Couldn't help but include this recent example. One of our competitors, as an eDynamics competitors, is a big shop in content management systems and content management solutions. They compete with us on several large opportunities, and recently, they came up with something which was an important industry consideration, an important topic as far as prospects are concerned. And people who are implementing new content management solutions were looking at content migration is a big pain area. It is a big pain area. It's understood by everybody in the industry. But the problem happened when some eager marketers at their end, kind of messed up the two terms. Content migration is different from data migration, and what they ended up was basically with a mess. So they started posting, they started going through social to search to content posting using a mixture of these two terms, and these two terms are entirely different. Content migration is very different from data migration, and this is one example of where we benefited as a competitor because their marketing messaging was not up to the mark, because it was not approved appropriately or not QA'd appropriately. So that's that's one of the examples that we wanted to share with you. So those are some instances of why demand gen can truly suffer. You can set out with the right ideals, like we covered in the first part of the presentation, but you can end up with less than satisfactory results because a lot of things are not going the way they should be going. How do we prevent that? And that's what we're going to talk about in the next little section, which is about setting up an enterprise common denominator, which is basically nothing but a few things that are done across your marketing organization that need to have a big impact in terms of ensuring that what you set out to do, what you plan to do, is executed right down to the T. So we brought back the modern marketer this time, looking a bit more determined, because he's probably realized what is going wrong and needs to be corrected. So what are the 4 principles again that lead to a streamlining of approach and doing things right, in terms of getting results? So one of them is about processes, and we talked about process undermining your effort as a marketer. But I think, and what we've experienced is that process is about defining the right kind of baselines and nothing else. So if we do that, then as marketers we can be fairly assured that we'll see the right results. And talk a bit more about that in the slides to follow. The other big piece is about collaboration. Marketing is all about getting inputs, and more so in the age of content marketing, inputs and contributions from so many different kinds of stakeholders and business. Marketing needs to work with all of these stakeholders. They could be external, they could be internal, and there are many. So compliance is really, really important, because when you're dealing with more people, there are more complexities to the entire process of collaboration. More time is required. There are different kinds of people, and it's just human element, different personalities, different kinds of timelines, different kinds of expectations from each person as far as marketing is concerned. And unless there is a compliance framework, into how marketing wants to work with these people, then it's not going to work. It's not going to work for a number of reasons that we covered just a little while back. Continue to be creative, because that's a true differentiator. And creativity can be torn apart if process and technology really don't align with what you're producing. So continue to be creative, and it'll still remain the true differentiator between you and your competition. And finally, automation is ensuring deliverability, and that's what its role should be. For a modern marketer, it should not dictate what you want to do in your next calendar year, in terms of your budgets, in terms of what you want to do. It should not be driven by the tools that you have. The tools are just there to ensure that you get your message out to the right people at the right time and the right device. And some baselines that we found to work, and again, there's so much more that can be said on this, but in the interest of time, there's so much to do for a modern marketer. There's a new channel opening up every day, and their challenges are simply multiplying by the year. So in times like these, setting up very simple baselines that work, and and this is a sample baseline for a social media initiative or social marketing initiative. This is, just keep it very simple, but ensure that it is understood by everybody who's working with you in terms of this is a must-have, needs to be done, needs to be followed. And then, collaborative compliance, I referred to that a while back, why it's important to cover any kind of risk that comes in when you work with multiple contributors or people. They have to work in the way that you define, and that way can be defined by the modern marketer. You can take help from other stakeholders in your organization to set up this way. And what you see here are some examples of that. There is a content workflow that you see here. There's an approval to every piece of content that needs to be produced. There is a social marketing discipline that you see here. If you want to have 100 tweets out at 9 a.m. every single day of the week, then it needs to be 100 tweets at 9 a.m. every single day of the week, and those 100 tweets have to be going through the workflow for approval before they are published by a social media tool. So it's just a discipline that is very important, because otherwise you might end up with very embarrassing situations, because there's so much of content flying around. You can't help it. And again, there are examples of how you publish documents. What is the discipline or artifacts that you need to follow through. And there's design, there's creativity, which you design a piece of content, a landing page, a great website, or anything at all. There's creativity involved, and there's overlap. So there needs to be a very, very well-defined process of compliance to everything. Whether it's small things like font size to larger things like usability or W3C compliance, etc. I mean, there's so much more that can be said about this, but the general idea is to ensure that these guidelines are set by marketing to ensure everybody complies with them. And a big chunk of bad revenue impact is to do with bad data. And preventing a bad data overload is essential. It's mandatory to your success as a marketer. If you want to truly add value in terms of revenue, you can't have your marketing effort being driven by bad data. So data audit is very much something that should be considered every now and then. It just helps to eliminate human error. It helps to eliminate any kind of loopholes that that might exist in your system despite your best efforts. So a data audit and leading up to a data warehouse, depending on whether you have a requirement, is always a very good idea. And throughout this presentation, I've not even once mentioned anything about big data. It's a term that's governing a lot of marketers' minds these days. But for us, even the little steps leading up to a big data situation are even more important. What you see here, is data audit that can lead to a big data scenario, because the larger the data set you're targeting could be big, small, or medium. But what's essential is that the basics are followed and you have the right kind of data to drive your marketing from. And finally, the important thing is that sales is no more a consumer or buyer for marketing. That access has shifted. It's a joint and shared responsibility. Probably the two groups that have maximum responsibility towards revenue are these two groups in the organization. And people, when they say that we are aligned fully, are lying. And statistics don't lie. Figures don't lie. Research doesn't lie. And it's important that this alignment is understood and accepted by both teams and in every organization, because if that's not the case, then there'll always be the bad numbers to talk about at the end of the year. Or one group might do excellent work and the other group might not. So marketing might have big impact in terms of pipeline, and sales might not close that many leads. So that shared responsibility is very important, and while it never be 50-50, but it's important that the two parties work towards a common goal of revenue, because it's these two parties that are now jointly driving revenue and not any one of them. So those were some consideration towards a common denominator, of setting up a framework that marketers can feed from. And finally, there's an awesome case study that I wanted to cover in just a minute, which is about the three key tenets of demand gen: creativity, process, and technology, which combined lead to good demand gen, in our opinion. And a great example of this is an example from eBay. Their crowdsourcing campaign was led for several years in the past 2 to 3 years, and did great. And the tenets of crowdsourcing worked on technology, on process, because by crowdsourcing, what we mean is basically going out and talking to and getting contributions from a variety of subject matter experts, customers, prospects, different kinds of groups, etc. And all of this was to be handled through technology and through process, because that not being the case, you will make a mess of trying to get so many things to happen on a business critical e-commerce site like eBay is. So this is a typical example of how a very creative concept of crowdsourcing was executed using the right mix of process and technology. So that was about eBay, and it's a great example, like I said. And finally, I'll leave passing thought is that revenue impact is must-have, and marketers cannot do everything. They cannot do it all. It's a collaborative effort, but it needs to be driven by marketing. But the key thing is that table stakes are very high, and you should be able to get to your customers, and technology should be able to allow you to do that, and not any other way. Behind our creativity, it's always the thing that differentiates you. And revenue is everybody's business in the organization. Marketing needs to set the rules. And finally, unless you get these three working together, which is your creative strength, your people, process, and technology, you will really not be able to achieve the true strength or the true power of demand generation going forward. That's all that I had for today. I hope there were some good takeaways, and I hope that I was able to make some good points that might be relevant to you going forward. Look forward to your company again. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhiraj. The webinar's recording will be available on our website within the next 3 business days. We'll also be sharing the webcast URL with all the attendees via email. We have a few questions, but since we are running out of time, we'll have to get back to them after the webinar. At this note, we'll have to end this webinar, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending our webinar. We hope you found it informative. Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you, Abhiraj.
The organizer has ended the session.